Okay. Gonna start recording episode 9 of Finding Your Identity, and we're gonna get going. It's gonna be a fun one. Welcome to Finding Your Identity, episode 9. This is gonna be an interesting episode because it's gonna be how your cell phone of choice can reflect your personality type, which is kind of interesting. And I did a little bit of digging on the internet to see what they had out there for studies, and they, interestingly enough, had some studies. There were some British research firms that had done some studies. Couple hundred people in this study, and found a couple bits of interesting information. The two big ones that anyone really cares about are Android and iPhone, and choosing if you're going to have a Android device or an iPhone device seems to be a pretty big deal to a lot of people, because it sometimes is hard to see people switch over. And I'll get into that a little bit later, because I think that's kind of interesting in itself about how you decide which phone you're gonna get. But just for some interesting facts from that study, if you are an iPhone user, you're more likely to be younger, and you're twice as likely to be a woman. So there's more women iPhone owners out there than males. You're more extroverted, and you tend to think that your iPhone is a status object, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know if I necessarily really believe that. I don't think. I think if you were to look at the condition of the iPhone, that would tell you if the person thinks it's a status object, because I think sometimes, when they care about it more, they put it in a fancy case, or they really take good care of it, then maybe that's, more of the indicator, I think. But, I think on its own, I don't know if that's necessarily true. But it seems that people, also in that study, are less concerned about, owning a phone that everybody else owns, which is, kind of an interesting thought, because in a day and age where people are trying to be unique and stand out, you'd think people would care more about what kind of phone they owned, because everybody's walking around with iPhones, it seems. It seems to be like the dominant cell phone, at least in the United States. But it's interesting, because if everybody wants to be unique, wants to be their own person, but everybody's carrying the same phone, everyone looks like they're talking on the same exact device, and it's such a big part of their lives, that seems contradictory. But I guess that's when you see people put them in unique cases, or they carry them in different kinds of holders. Later on I'll talk about how you hold your phone can indicate different characteristics of your personality. And at the end, we'll do a fun little BuzzFeed test about your personality type based off of different things to do with your phone. But to kind of get into this a little bit more, Android users are more likely to be male, more likely to be older. They are more honest and more agreeable. I agree with that. I own an Android. They're less likely to break the rules for personal gain, and they're less concerned about wealth and status. That's according to this study. I think to cite the source, it was University of Lincoln and Lancaster University. I found this article on ScienceDaily.com, so you can go look it up yourself. Their source was Lancaster University. This is from 2016, but it's been cited quite a bit, like I saw the same study being cited on how stuff works in an article there about your personality depending on the cell phone you own. So you can go do your own research, or you can just take my word for it. And if you're an iPhone user, you're gonna. So now I want to talk about how you can really see some of the differences, I guess, in the types of phones right off the bat. Now, one of the big ones I think with iPhones is it's pretty uncustomizable for the most part. You got your rectangular device, and you've got the square round-edged icons, which you can put into folders, but for the most part I think people just have a ton of screens, and they've just got a ton of icons for all their apps on their iPhone. And this is I think a matter of taste, because I think people are just like, give me a place to put the apps on the screen so I can open the apps, and that's where it really the meat of the phone is. That's where it really counts. It's where I want to spend my time, is digging into when I get into the app, I'm going to dig into whatever I'm looking to do at the time. Look at the news, look at the weather, manage banking, whatever it is, look at your yoga schedule. I mean, there's so many things you can do on a cell phone. So, watch YouTube videos of cats, or this podcast, which is recorded on YouTube now, or open up your favorite Apple Podcast or Google Podcast app on your device. I mean, we're talking about iPhone, so it'd be Apple Podcast most likely, although there are probably better podcast apps out there. But anyways, I think Anchor, that's where I put my apps, my podcast through that app. So, I should mention that, give it a little shout out. But, people I think that have iPhones, they don't really care so much about doing the customization. They probably have some kind of screen that's personalized for their lock screen, or, the background when you get to when you unlock the phone, you get to the desktop screen, as I'm going to call it. But, that's mainly it. There's not a lot of bells and whistles to it. Android, on the contrary, has tons of ways to customize, and they have the widgets, which are, a big standout factor on Androids. And, I leverage widgets because I love them. I think they're a great feature because they're a preview into the full app, or sometimes they're completely standalone. I have one that's it's a device one, which helps me just see the kind of, the memory that I've got free to do stuff on the phone, and also how much hard drive space I have, and I can hit a button and I can clear the RAM and clear the cache, and help make the phone a little bit faster. I also have little icon widgets that I can turn my different room lights on and off. You've got the ones that you can play your music. I've got ones for watching the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's a calendar widgets, it's from your desktop. I'm gonna call it desktop, but your phone screen. Your main phone screen. You got several windows. On that screen, and I don't have to actually dig into the app and launch the app, which is kind of saving battery and saving memory and whatnot, and time, because I can just flip to the screen, see what's next in my appointment calendar list. Now granted, I think on an iPhone, and it's been a couple years since I've owned one, because I used to have to carry one for work along with my Android phone, so I used to carry two devices around. I think at the time it was an iPhone 7 and an iPhone 8, and at different times, but when I upgraded. But when I carried that around, I think there was a dock at the bottom you swiped up. That might have been the toggles. I think maybe you swiped down and you had your notification panel with some other options to show, like weather and stocks and calendar and stuff like that. But essentially you had somewhat of a widgety type of thing, but it was really isolated to that section, which you had to swipe down from the top of the screen. Whereas on Android, I like it being a widget that is on the screen along with other icons mixed in. And I use a custom launcher. They're called launchers, which controls that view and theme of all the icons and the widgets, and even to some degree the effects. Like mine is like a cube. When I swipe my finger across the screen, it rotates and it actually looks like a cube. You can change the effects so it looks like a windmill. It goes kind of I guess counterclockwise or clockwise, spinning in a rectangle, and the whole screen is flipping. And it looks neat. It's more bells and whistles than functionality, but sometimes controlling the icons, I can actually adjust them so I can fit more icons on the screen where it doesn't seem too crowded. I have a Note 9, so it's a pretty big screen space, so I have a lot of room to have a ton of icons. Like I'm looking at it right now, and I've got a 5x7 grid, so I can have 5 icons across and 7 up and down. So it's like I could have 35 icons on there if I wanted to. But yeah, so it's kind of a different experience, and I've had Android for years. I had the iPhone for a while, especially when I had to build apps. I had to carry that thing around, and I'd have apps that I had built for iPhone, which I use and test functionality. And there's some, when you get into the apps, there's some features that are a little bit nicer. They're a little bit more smooth. At least at the time that I was developing apps, it felt like a smoother experience. So there were some benefits to it, but I really like Android for more than just what that main screen is, because you can get super granular with Android, and I'm not trying to make this a episode where I'm trying to pitch the Android device or trying to convince people to switch. I think there's strengths to both. I think if you think of it from simple terms, they both make phone calls. They both have a ton of apps that are available on both devices. They have messaging. They can make it so that you can watch movies or videos or take pictures and store pictures. Each of them have different strengths in terms of the camera capability, but they're relatively similar. They're pretty on par as they come out within a couple megapixels or something like that. But they I think between my phone and my wife's phone, she has an iPhone 10 and I have the Note 9, I think they take relatively good pictures, close in quality. So I think from that functionality perspective, there's really not too big of a difference when you compare those features. But with the Android, when you start thinking about, and this goes back to the episode about practicing safe internet, when you think about privacy or being able to detect if you're being tracked for some reason by an app. For instance, Facebook, it was discovered, had essentially partnered with one of the big carriers, it probably was Verizon, to embed an app that the only purpose of that app was for tracking. And it was embedded, and it was kind of named some kind of funky name that wasn't recognizable. And you had to actually dig into your apps to figure out how to disable it. And you couldn't even delete it from the device. You could only just disable it. You couldn't even remove it. You could, but Android, with the power of control, lets you go in and actually disable permissions to certain things. So you could make it not have access to the camera, to your SD card, to your microphone, to video, or I just said camera, to your contact list, so it couldn't initiate phone calls. You can go and control permissions. This Android system lets you do that, but it's a little scary to think that Facebook kind of snuck that in there. I mean, it's not surprising, but it's scary. But there's other apps that you have to worry about, and some apps, it could be that you have a text messaging app that you're trying out, and you just don't want it to have access to your microphone because you're afraid and paranoid that it's going to record. You can go in an Android and actually disable that permission. And it's been a while since I've looked at iOS, but I'm starting to think that you might be able to do some minimal similar things on iPhone to disable permissions, which I should actually look that one up a little bit more. But I don't think you can get as granular. I think you can actually see the different permissions that the apps are using, but it might just be to make the decision whether or not you want to continue using that app. Now, I think with Android, one of the other features I like is that I'm a developer, is you can actually enable these developer settings, and then you can actually dig into the nitty gritty of how the phone works. You can see, a lot of the internal pieces, and not everybody's going to take advantage of that, nor will they care about that, but I like that feature. So, I think there's a lot of developers that do have Android devices, although I've met some good developers that were diehard Apple fans, and they had the Macs and they had the iPads and they had the iPhones and they had Mac or Apple TVs and iWatches or Apple Watches and probably AirPods. And me, I'm just like, I don't want Apple stuff. Well, except for my MacBook, because I love my MacBook, but I don't want Apple stuff, I guess that's my position. Like, I have the Android tablet, and I have the Android phone, and I have, Galaxy Buds, the earphones, and I've got an Android watch, and, I've always been into that ecosystem. And I think, once you've kind of got sucked into that ecosystem, I think the brilliance of the marketing wings of these companies is the fact that they get you into the ecosystem, and you're less likely to go jump ship and switch to the other side, because now you have an iWatch and you've got AirPods, for your headphones, and you've got an iPad and you've got a Mac, and it's like everything is synced up, and you've got the synergy between all those devices to make it super convenient so that everything is talking to each other. You're less likely to go jump and get an Android phone, because you're kind of breaking the ecosystem rhythm there. And, I think that's kind of an important, point to make, is the fact that, once you've kind of gotten into that ecosystem, it could actually cost a lot of money to leave the ecosystem and to switch, because, as someone who had kind of gone back and forth as to whether I should get AirPods or get Galaxy Buds, I decided to get the Galaxy Buds because I knew they were going to work very well with my Galaxy phone, because it's Samsung and they talked to each other a lot better, and it has the functionality where you take it out of your ear, it immediately pauses the music, whereas that wouldn't work so well on an iPhone, and vice versa. AirPods, when I looked at the AirPods, the feature that you take it out of your ear and it pauses the music, that doesn't work if you're on an Android phone. So you start to build these dependencies, cross devices, and you start to see why there's so much ingrained loyalty in these with these ecosystems. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, something to kind of point out if you're considering switching. I really kind of was digging into this to be, a little tongue-in-cheek about the different personality types when you've got the different types of devices. But it's also, kind of an interesting conversation to have, to talk about, because it's become such a big part of everyday life. Your phone has become a big part of your life. Like I love that the Galaxy Buds fit in a little case and go in my pocket. AirPods do the same thing, and I can carry those things around, and I could whip them out and pop them in my ear. And I've got these little portable headphones that come with a charging case, so I pop them back in the charging case, and that case charges the headphones up a few times before I have to go and charge the case. But it's a wirelessly charging case, which AirPods has the same feature, although you have to pay extra for their charging case, where Samsung, you didn't. And you're looking at like $100, $120 versus $170 or $199 or something like that for AirPods. Yeah, I think it's $199 for the AirPods with the charging wireless charging case. And you could probably get the first generation for like $150 for those AirPods. I think the other thing, like if you look at the two devices, you're spending $1,000 now at least on a phone. But that can be said for both. Although iPhones, they tend to have the higher premium. If you wait till Black Friday to buy phones, which I've been doing the past couple of years, you can actually get them for at least 40% off, if not 50%. 2 years ago, not this past Black Friday, I got 50% off on my Note 9, and 40% off on my Note 9. And the previous year, when I got the Note 8, I got 50% off. So I hope it's not, decrementing in these 10% ranges. Like, I hope it's not only a 30% discount on a phone that's gone up by 30%. But anyways, these phones are super expensive to invest in. You got to consider that you're investing in it as an ecosystem. You get an iPad that's $600. You got AirPods that are $200. You got an Apple Watch, which I think is $300, maybe $350. You got Macs, which could be $2,000. You got the iPhone, which maybe the next one's going to be $2,000. Who knows? I think they're around $1,000, $1,200. Like that's like a lot of money. I mean, it's like what, $5,000? I don't know. I didn't do the math, but you're getting up there to a couple $1,000s for that ecosystem, to be in that ecosystem. And that's the premium ecosystem. Like Android, you might be able to get the phone for $700 like discounted, right, or $600 discounted, and then you pay about around $100 for the AirPods, right, and then you can get tablets for $200, right. We're still not even at $1,000. You got three of those items right there. The Android watch, maybe another $200. Or what, $900, $1,000. They don't. You could opt to go for the Chromebook, and even that you can get for like another $200. So not like you think about staying in that Android ecosystem, or the Google ecosystem, I should say. And even if you went pure Google and you went with the Pixel, and that's like $300, like you could do Android all the way 100% for less than $1,000, where you'd have phone, headphones, tablet, computer, and watch, and you're under $1,000 for all that. And you try to do the same thing when it comes to Apple, and you're upwards of $4,000, maybe $4,000. So that distinction is important to make, and when you're committing to just the phone, like you think a little bit beyond that. It's not just the phone, it's the whole ecosystem you're kind of committing to, in the long run. So now if you're financially conscious, now the part about it that says it's a status object, like I think is 100% true for a lot of people, that they think of it as, that means I'm high class, or I'm high end, or whatever. I don't know what the lingo is these days for the kids, but rad. No, that's probably not it. Whatever the term is, it is interesting that it is considered a status object, and up there with watches, like that used to be, it used to be the Rolex, or what is the Omegas, or can't even think of high-end watches because I've never owned one. I think Tag Heuer or something like that. Tag Heuer. There's Nautilus or something like that. I don't know. High-end watches used to be the high-end accessory in a sense, and now the iPhone is the high-end accessory with an iWatch and AirPods, and that's developing a status, having those things. You seeing those white little stems sticking out of the ear is giving an indication, of status, like to some degree, and it's kind of interesting how society is kind of developed in that way, so that it actually does like provide this opportunity for people to define themselves around electronics gadgets, whereas it's still to some degree about fashion, but it used to be more about fashion than it was electronic gadgets. But that's just the day and age we live in. I tend to like saving money, so I refuse to pay full price for things. So I'm gonna go shop around, and like I said in the previous episode about doing your due diligence to search online for deals, it pays off, and that's the only way I like to shop. And Slick Deals is my go-to place when I want to get a new gadget, because I want to find what the comparable prices were, and then check that Honey app on Amazon to see what the price history was, for that particular item. But that's just me, and I think that is kind of pointing back to my personality type, and being that I own an Android phone, and like I don't care so much about status. Although when a new Android phone comes out, I want to get it first, because I like the idea of like being different and having that new different phone, but also having it be a first early adopter to that new phone. But it gets harder and harder, because phones are just becoming so ingrained, and people are just constantly upgrading. It's hard to compete unless you find a way to build your own cell phone. Like, you really can't stand out as easily as you used to be with cell phones. It used to be, someone had a flip phone, and then all of a sudden I got a BlackBerry, and now, like, I'm standing out because I got the BlackBerry, But now, nowadays it's like all the phones like kind of look the same. They're all these thin rectangular things that, unless you looked really close and saw the curved edges, you could tell it's a Samsung phone. Or you see this, you used to see the circle, thumb circle button on an iPhone, and you could tell it was an iPhone. I mean, now it's like it's getting harder to tell the difference between, Android and Apple phones unless you flip them over, But if it's in a case, who knows, until you see the screen pop up and you see what the lock screen looks like, and then you can tell. But I don't know. It's interesting, and I don't have like a ton more to really say about that whole thing. But I figured I'd mention the interesting thing about how you hold your phone. Now, you got to try to follow along and picture this. For the YouTube viewers, they'll be able to actually see me. But if you are holding your phone, and if you can see the different ways, there's A, B, C, and D. So basically A is when you're holding it with your left hand, and you're using your thumb to scroll up the screen. And it says, external characteristics. No one can defeat your intentions, interesting characteristics, and strong memory. You won't easily let go someone who you loved, and have a fairly mysterious character too. Hardworking and performing duties with full responsibility, ambitious, efficient, and flexible, full of talent, creativity, and fun with the crowd. So that's your extrovert, in the extrovert in you if you hold your phone with your left hand and you use your thumb to do your scrolling around the screen. Your inner character, you're not reckless, you're not careless, and you know who is treating you well, and vice versa. You can tell and differentiate hate and love clearly. Sometimes your choice of words spoken are not good to hear, although you didn't mean to hurt anyone. It's interesting. And your romantic side, when you believe in someone, you fully believe with your heart. You strongly believe in protecting yourself. Once you are hurt, believing again is hard. You're a willing person to sacrifice and willingly provide anything to a partner because you're a person who always values a relationship of love. The good news is that you are a hard-to-find partner. Now, so that was A. And now B is if you are holding your phone with your left hand and you're using your right thumb to scroll the screen and interact with the screen. Now, your external character is sensitive, imaginative, helpful, sympathetic, and have a strong intuition, have an active personality, and is a bit impatient. You love adventure, you're funny, capable of dismissing people's attacks with jokes. Your internal character, you're the kind that wanted to be protected, treated well, loves attention, and makes others around you feel good about you. You are too kind and don't have a strong standing and thus make yourself easily manipulated by others. You're the kind of person who is happy with simplicity. People around you need to give you a sense of honesty. Sometimes you're too kind, hard to be tough, and often used by people. You know clearly who is good to you and vice versa. You know how to distinguish between the word hate and love. And in the romance side, you're the kind of person who cannot express feelings. Often your partner feels less affection, although you have expressed it. You control your feelings so much that others do not know about your emotional changes. But what does this mean? But that does not mean you're a person who has no emotions. You're the kind of person who's willing to be emotional when you are in love. You're used to being good and kind to others and never selfish. Now C, the C personality type, is when you're holding the phone with both hands and scrolling with both your left and right thumb. Your external character is full of talent, creativity, charming, have vast associations, generous, smart, confident, and attractive with high self-esteem and power-centered, hardworking, performing duties with full responsibility, full of ambition, efficient, and flexible. Your internal character, you have a weak personality. Sometimes what you want to do is always hindered by the fear you create in yourself. You're afraid to disappoint because you have high expectations. You need someone who understands you from your perspective. Your demand is not much. You just have to find someone who really understands you. You're also one who can appreciate people as they are, sincerely and irrespective of their statuses. Now, the romance side, past romance memories are very difficult for you to forget. You are afraid of loneliness and always hope for someone getting close to you. However, you will turn back in doubt when you have high expectations of your partner in the relationship. You do not care about your own feelings too much, though. You will pretend you're okay even though you are in doubt of your partner to maintain the love relationship. Now, the last personal trait is D, which is holds the mobile phone with your one hand and scrolls up with your pointer finger. And your external character is very creative, smart, and sharp-minded, realistic view, love beauty and art, have sensual attention and sometimes too much thought, intelligent mind, full of charm, and uphold harmony. Your internal character, you're the kind of person who prefers to be silent and say nothing, but that's your charm. You are willing to sacrifice for others to avoid hurting them. Sometimes your words are too painful, although you have no such intentions. In fact, you are not hard to understand You're not a hard to understand person, just hard to find the right person for you. You hope to live in a beautiful world and everyone is happy. As long as others can understand you, this is enough for you. And your romantic side is you do not like being in front of everyone and in crowded conditions. For you, a cozy, well-kept, and familiar place is comfortable, and the same goes with love. Your biggest weakness lies in your easily crushed heart, and that makes it easy for you to get hurt when there is a quarrel between you and your partner. You are also the kind of person who is easy to be sympathetic if someone is crying in front of you, so you sympathize and forgive. Now, I found this on goodtimes.my. That's goodtimes.my. And it's the title of the article is "The Way You Hold Your Mobile Phone Can Reveal Your Personality." So, in case anyone wants to look up that article, but that's an interesting perspective. And the last thing, I'm going to take a phone quiz, because BuzzFeed has this phone quiz, and it's reveals your personality based on your smartphone usage. So, what kind of phone do you use? I choose Android. Does your phone have a cracked screen? I say no. Where do you keep your phone at night? I say next to my bed. Do you have a dating app on your phone? I say no. At what point do you typically charge your phone? Now, I can choose whenever I can, even if it's like 85%. Some of the other options are usually around 30%, typically when it's under 15%, or after the battery is entirely drained. Now, honestly, I usually charge it when I can, because I hate when it goes below 50%, but that's just me. Now, which apps do you use frequently? There's several apps, and I choose Twitter. How often do you use your phone to make actual calls? And I say I avoid it as much as possible. How often do you use emojis when you text? I say pretty much every text. Have you ever dropped your phone in the toilet? And I say no, that would never happen. I'd say no, but I've had some close calls. I'd like to say never happened, but I've had close calls. Do you ever put your phone in battery saver mode? No, I never did that. When would you never use your phone? And I just say, the options are while dining with other people, while on a date, at a movie theater or a play, in a bathroom, at a work meeting, or all of the above. This one's kind of hard. I lean towards at work meeting. Oh, okay. So, my result, I got the people person. You tend to be friendly, talkative, and outgoing, and put a lot of energy into seeking out pleasure and fun. So, that's interesting. And I'll probably find a way to post this out so people can actually take the test themselves, because it's kind of interesting. But in the meantime, I'm wrapping up this episode. It's been fun talking about cell phones and what they really mean in your life. And I just want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of Finding Your Identity. It was kind of a random, quirky one, but still good, I think. Hope you do too. And hope to catch you next time on Finding Your Identity. Thanks. And for you YouTube people, until next time, peace out.